This is a quick revision of Brothers by Duffy. First of all, in terms of themes, it shares many of the same ideas as those of other poems that we touched on, like Nostalgia, like Before You Were Mine. With the structure, we're dealing with 4 stanzas, each stanza being a quatrain, so the concept of the number 4 seems to be significant from the structure. And when we realise that there are 4 brothers, we can perhaps see that there's a link between the structure of the poem and the content. Going on to the first stanza. Once I slept in a bed with these 4 men. It seems interesting that she's chosen to identify them as these 4 men rather than brothers. It seems to suggest a degree of alienation from her family and might set out her stall in regard to the rest of the poem's discussion of family. Who share an older face is a little bit unclear and ambiguous, but perhaps they share an older face with the child from the past. We can see the connection between the young person and the older person, although it's grown older, or, perhaps more interestingly, that we get this sense of a physical, genetic link between Duffy and the brothers. They share their faces, they share their genes, but in other ways they're very different. And can be made to laugh even now at random quotes from the play we were in. There's no way in the creation of God's earth, I say. They grin and nod. The connection between the members of the family is one that's based on the past. It's one that's based on nostalgia. It's based on shared experience, but not recent shared experience. It's all based on the past. This kind of play from when they were in school. Second stanza is full of interesting elements. What was possible retreats and shrinks. Presumably what was possible relates to dreams of the future, which is lost as time progresses. It fades through memory, and this gradual process of fading is perhaps communicated through the repetition of words like shrinks, shrink. And in my other eyes, they shrink to a... Notice again we've got this idea of the other. Here the other eyes are perhaps her eyes as a girl. Perhaps it's again that reference to the past. A boy practicing scales, an altar boy, a boy playing tennis with wall, a baby. In memory, the brothers are all kind of simplified, they're all kind of condensed, they boil down to a particular facet of their personality or one thing that they do. It's an altar boy, a boy practicing scales. They're reduced in memory to something that makes them identifiable. And then we get this final really interesting simile. A baby crying in the night like a new sound, flailing for a shape. Once again, it seems to be linked to the notion of identity. The baby is crying, and that sound is personified as flailing for a shape. It tries to have form, it tries to have meaning, rather than just being an inarticulate cry. So you have a simile of identity, and that emotive verb flailing is the perhaps interesting one. It suggests that there's some kind of struggle to form identity. Next stanza, occasionally when people ask, I enjoy reciting their names. I don't have photographs, but I like to repeat the names. Reciting, repeating. Again, there's that sense of repetition that links back to the previous stanzas, where we have that sense of memory trying to be held on to through the process of repetition. But it's not the brothers, really, that are being focused on here. It's more the mother. My mother chose them. My mother chose their names. I hear her life in the words, the breeding words. Well, I suppose you could read the breeding words, this metaphor, the breeding words as words that she's had to produce as a result of breeding. You know, she's given birth to these children and then she has to name them. But she's giving identity to these people by giving them a name. She forms identity. Language creates identity. And by the kind of words that are chosen, you get a sense of the mother. By naming a child a certain way, she gets a sense of what her mother's like. It gives her a link to her mother. So that, you know, if a mother calls a girl Charlotte, you'd maybe assume something about the nature of the mother. If the mother calls the boy Kevin, you're going to assume a different thing about him. I hear her life in the words, the breeding words. The word that broke her heart. Now, this is very ambiguous. What could this word that broke her heart be? The best reading I've heard recently for it is, it could be the word lesbian. She has these 4 boys and then this one girl, and Caroline Duffy is a lesbian. So for her to reveal that to her mother would have been a really profound act. It must have been very difficult for her. And for her mother to hear that means that she won't have any children through her daughter, she may feel. Obviously Duffy did end up having a child, but perhaps that's why it was the word that broke her heart, if indeed it was. Final stanza. Much in common me with thieves and... There seems something very strange about the grammar here. Much in common me. And I would argue that the non-standard grammar is perhaps intentional in order to push the identity, the self, later on. Rather than saying, I have much in common, it's much in common me. The self becomes less significant. With thieves and businessmen fathers and UB40s. Once again, the brothers' identities are simplified, condensed, broken down. Just as before they were altar boys, now they're thieves, businessmen. Their occupation defines them. It's something very simple, very easily recognisable. You know, it's not a complex personality that shows that she knows her brothers really well. It's just a little thing that defines them. Perhaps again showing the alienation, the distance in their relationships. UB40s, if you weren't aware, were the name that was given to the thing that you would use if you got unemployment benefit. We have nothing to say of now, but time owns us. Could that be because of their shared experiences? Could it be because of fate, the gradual progress towards death? It's not very uplifting. How tall they have grown. If you hear that expression, it's probably from something like your gran, because they tend to say things like, oh, haven't you shot up? Haven't you grown? And there's that sense of time and distance here, that once again, she doesn't have a close relationship with her brothers, that when she sees them, she recognises that they've shot up, that they've changed, because there isn't a close relationship. One day, I shall pay for a box and watch them shoulder it. Again, it's ambiguous, but I would argue that the box is likely to be a coffin, probably a coffin for the mother. Is there a suggestion that she's the responsible one in the family? She's going to be the one that pays for the coffin, and all they'll be able to do is hold it on their shoulders and take the burden of carrying it.